read that. So
thank you, Minister. I've met with many constituents and, quite frankly, just folks all over Calgary on this issue, and I quite frankly just hope that the Calgary Board of Education is able to find ways to deal with their budget issues without affecting the classrooms. And quite frankly, I sincerely hope that they're able to make the case for any specific actions that are taken that affect the classroom. I hope they're able to make the case to the public that all other avenues were pursued and exhausted before any action that affects the classroom had to be taken. Shifting gears a bit, Minister, I'm going to shift gears actually quite a bit here. So, sir, I think our students use textbooks from a very early age. When can our students do away with physical textbooks and every student in Alberta, instead of having a physical textbook, have an iPad with all of that material on that electronic device?
Interesting question. Just to finish off the last one, the two categories I was thinking were system administration and board governance. So those are the two areas that fit into that 4% cap. We had sort of nominally, I think, in the department, been aiming at a 2015 time frame to say we could be on, we could have our resources on an electronic basis. That wasn't necessarily to equip every student with an iPad, but that textbooks would become digital, essentially, as an option, if not as a reality for students by 2015. We're probably going to be a little bit behind that kind of a curve because that takes resources, and we've had to cut back our budget to play a leadership role in the process. So the other thing that's important on that, though, is we just finished what was called the One-to-One Emerge project, in which was it 26 schools across the province had one or more classes with a one-to-one laptop program. The results, particularly at the elementary, junior high area, were phenomenal. And actually, at one point in time, we were talking about how we could ramp that program up, consistent with what you're talking about. But again, that requires resources, and so the time frames will probably be extended a little bit. And one of the other things we need to look at is how then do we enable people to bring their own digital devices into the learning process and use them that way, and then how do you compensate or create some equity for those people who perhaps don't have or don't have access to, and that sort of thing. So I think schools are doing actually a pretty favorable job of making sure that there are laptops available and there are digital devices available. Many schools are very progressive about finding ways to fund laptops, and most schools are finding ways to have a learning contract with students to allow them to bring their own digital devices if they use them responsibly.
I think, Minister, the issue of resources is an issue we'll always face. I think it's quite conclusive that sustained budget increases are not sustainable. Year after year, budget increases are not sustainable, and quite frankly, I think we need to have a very serious conversation with the textbook lobby to say we're going to pull away from this, give us the digital licenses for this material so that we can start using electronic devices as opposed to physical textbooks. I think the money is within the system to move forth on this much sooner. I don't think every single initiative we want to pursue is reliant on new money. Quite frankly, I'm sure you probably don't have the answers to this today, but I would ask, how much does the government spend on textbooks per student, or how much does the school board spend on textbooks per student, let's say from K to 6, or from 7 to 9 and 10 to 12? I think that we can find some innovative ways to move forth on these projects much sooner without burdening the public purse. I think it just requires innovation, creativity, and being a little firm with the textbook lobby, Minister. I think we can most definitely pursue this if we have the ability to be firm with that textbook lobby. So that's one piece. The next piece, Minister, is is our provincial tests are a productive instrument for the system overall. However, our provincial tests must become a productive instrument for the individual student's learning. So if we're going to have provincial testing in grade 3, when are we going to have a student-by-student analysis of that testing, and then a student-by-student process to increase student outcomes based on that testing? I mean, it's wonderful that we identify a whole bunch of students that are likely to drop out in grade 12, but what are we going to do with that information? Every single child that drops out of grade 12 in Alberta is not just letting themselves and their families down. Quite frankly, it affects all of us as a society. So, Minister, that's the second piece. I know we're running short on time, so I'd like to just get some of these questions out there. Provincial testing and the link to competency. As you know, Minister, I passed Motion 508 in this House in last year actually, and that talked about innovative and competency-based learning that has connections to the real world. So that means a high school student having the capacity to take post-secondary courses while in high school. That means high school students having the capacity to connect with the real world and real-world learning opportunities while in high school. We have to get education. That's K-12 education and post-secondary education, as well as all this trades trainings and the skills training areas, to stop working in silos. They must look at themselves as a continuum. If we are to achieve greater rates of post-secondary participation, then they must see kindergarten to post-secondary as a continuum. The strength of our province and our nation, quite frankly, relies on that. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Minister. And then one more piece I'll throw out before I turn the floor over to you is teacher incentive. And I know there's a lot out there that don't want to hear about teacher incentive. But, Minister, there's some teachers, like somebody I know very well, who's working with a group of children that have a whole series of difficulties, and she's able to bring them up sometimes 2 grade levels. These are the sorts of teachers that need to be rewarded, Minister, and I think our system needs to better reward teachers that produce results. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
You have 1 minute and a half.
1 minute and a half. Well, the Learning Resources Centre, we fund, we buy down the price of the books by 25%, so we fund it of about $5.5 million a year, and that means school boards spend about $30 million a year. So $35 million a year on texts and resources. Now, the problem with that is, of course, you can't just say, stop doing these ones, start doing these ones. There's a phase-in period that you have to work on. But I think the point that you're making is a good one. We need to start doing a very comprehensive and intentional approach towards digital resources, and we could utilize some of the resources that are in the system to do that. With respect to the connection between high school and community, I think there's some very good work being done, at least in some schools and some jurisdictions, in doing that, not just work experience programs, but RAP programs and connection. So that, and one of the things we've been encouraging is bringing the community in and bringing business in. So Junior Achievement, for example, does a wonderful job across the province in some schools where they're encouraged to come in. And those are the types of connections and partnerships we need to create even more of. And that's the idea that students are engaged is foundational to the learning profile. With respect to teacher incentives, that's always a difficult issue. The reality is teachers, like every other professional, get most of their reward intrinsically because of what they do. And they're not looking necessarily for extra pay, and they don't necessarily want to be singled out, but they do want to have the opportunity to do their best job and have the time to do their best job. And that's the way that the normal system, you can actually recognize some of that work more comprehensively if we build the structure that allows that to happen.